Happy to have our man Will Z back here with us. Will, we've been talking about, and I'm sure you just heard Drake Yu talking about Keegan Murray. It feels like Keegan has been the center of the Sacramento Kings universe. He's been the center of the Sacramento Kings offseason for virtually this entire offseason. And there are obviously very high expectations for his development headed into his sophomore year.
It feels like a broken record at this point. Everyone's saying it. The proverbial step, the jump. Like, can Keegan take that? And if so, the Kings will be great, even better this year. But I mean, the opening, if you look at everything, is just right there. Like his role as a rookie was so unique in that he didn't have to do much, but what he did with that role was just astounding in terms of hitting his threes. So if he can just expand his game like everyone has been saying, to me, it takes the Kings into championship contender. I know that's a bit much, but again, in the West, Nuggets, and then it's kind of open after that. And I think
Yeah,
the Kings match up well with the Nuggets.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree. Where do you think because I feel like sometimes we talk about this in generic terms. Oh,
Mhm.
Keegan's going to be so much better. Where do you think the most improvement can come from Keegan Murray?
To me, I think it's definitely inside the arc. And I wrote about this in the article, kind of the three things, one of which was scoring inside the arc. So, of his field goals last year, he was just so kind of, I don't know if it was just the offensive role that Mike Brown put him in, but he was so constrained to shooting threes. Only 281 of his 782 field goal attempts were 2-point field goal attempts. So that's 35.9%. So it's just a huge kind of opening that we didn't see last year that if he can get better. Reminder that the Kings had the best 2-point percentage in NBA history last year. I think it was 58.1%. And that was with Keegan kind of struggling inside the key or inside the arc. His numbers last year weren't great. They were restricted area 63.3%, which is fine. You'll take that pretty much any day. But the floater area 39.1%, mid range 35.6%. Those numbers are very indicative of a rookie. I think that you see a lot of rookies kind of struggle in that mid-range floater area. But if you look at his playoff numbers, it was really that latter half of the series against Golden State where you saw him kind of start to work with Sabonis in that 2-point range. Those numbers in the floater area jumped to 57.1% and mid-range 66.7%. So huge spikes. And I think that that just kind of shows that as the season went on and as he got more comfortable kind of working in those zones, that he has that ability. And that's exactly what we saw in the California Classic, him able to just kind of expand his repertoire.
Do you think and I'm sure that we'll get into the other ways that um, Keegan can get better. I think one of
Mhm.
the more important things, and I feel like you might have written about this as well. If you haven't, I know we've certainly talked about it. Is obviously with Domas, Harrison, De'Aaron,
Mhm.
even Malik. It felt like the Kings never asked quote too much of him.
Mhm.
It was just we're going to get you involved. You're going to be a part of this. When it's there, it's yours. Right? It
Yep.
was very much in the flow of everything. Do you think they ask more of him this year?
I don't know. It's hard because really the whole Kings roster was like that. Like as a whole team, they didn't take bad shots. Like they didn't force anything unless it was at the end of the shot clock, and then usually it was just De'Aaron going to town. But it's interesting because it feels like for them to be good this year and even better this year, they still don't have to ask Keegan. To me, it's a lot of, are we looking at the future, like 2 years, 3 years down the line? I feel like you have to ask at least a little bit more of Keegan. You don't wanna limit him to just a three-point shooter for the first, I don't know, 2, 3 years of his career and have him kind of get constrained to that role for too long. So for me, I think so, but again, that's more long-term success than short-term as a roundabout way to answer, I
Sure.
guess.
No, I got you. So we look inside the arc. Is
Mhm.
it fair that was, one way that he can improve? Is it fair to put and Mike Brown is running through my head right now saying turn on the F and Jets. Is
Mhm.
it fair to throw rebounding into this category of improvement as well that could help the Kings a lot this season?
Yeah, and I think so, and that's kind of a boring thing to, like, talk about, and again, no
Mike
national
Brown
guy.
doesn't find it boring. I guarantee
No,
you that. Like Mike
he
Brown does
doesn't, I
not
don't.
find this subject boring.
No, not at all, but if, like, Keegan jumps from he was at 4.6 rebounds last year, if he jumps to 6 or 7, that'd be huge for the team. Again, I don't think any national people will even notice that if he makes that jump, but, if you look at when Keegan where is it? He had 10 plus rebounds 7 times last year, regular season and playoffs. The Kings were 6-1 in those 7 games. So, it's something where Harrison Barnes isn't going to just magically get better at rebounding in his 12th season. Like, I think Barnes is what he is at this point, and grabbing 4 to 5 boards a game, I think is just what Barnes is going to give you. So, I think that Keegan will have to kind of take that step in the rebounding category to make up some deficiencies from Barnes, who, if he's your 3 or if you're 4, kind of mix the 2 together. You've gotta get something from the combination of Barnes and Keegan, and I don't think that's gonna come from Barnes. So, to me, I think if Keegan can get that little jump in rebounding, again, it's not something that'll jump out at everyone, but it'll go a long way to help, especially with teams kind of focusing on limiting Sabonis, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we look at rebounding and again, it's why I don't think Mike finds this discussion even remotely boring. Is we look at rebounding as like, whatever. Sometimes defensive rebound ball, but if it's an offensive rebound, it's one of those things where we don't think oftentimes that defensive rebound leads to a fast break point. It means you
Mhm.
got to stop on on the defensive end. It's the end. I think Kenny always says this. It's the end of a defensive possession. The rebound is the end
Mhm.
of a defensive possession. And while it might not be 40% from 3 or a highlight dunk, think about the time Mike had something to say about his Sacramento Kings team after the Knicks game. He was talking
Yep.
about rebounding. Think about the discussion following game 7. Think about the discussion through the bulk of the Golden State Warriors series. It was about rebounding. Having a guy on the floor who steps up as another really solid rebounder could go a really, really long way for this team offensively and obviously defensively.
Yeah, and it's something where I'm gonna look up I think I looked this up last season during the year.
2 clicks
Um,
away.
yeah, what the Kings' record was when they won the rebounding battle. So,
Mm.
I remember it was a good outcome, but I just wanna kind of revamp the stat and see where we're at now, so give me just a minute or 2. I don't
Yeah, I'm
have
gonna
that.
let Will Z find that because I would be curious to see what that looked like in terms of wins and losses for the Sacramento Kings. Because it's something, obviously, we talked about a lot following the playoff series against the Golden State Warriors because so many people found, rightfully so, rebounding to be the Sacramento Kings' biggest issue, especially with what Kevon Looney did. And then that stretch in game 7 where it felt like the Kings were allergic to the basketball. One of the most frustrating things I ever saw
Yeah.
live was the constant 4-shot possessions that the
Oh, it's
Warriors
just
had.
brutal. And
Yeah,
it's one of those
absolutely
things
brutal.
where it wasn't again, it wasn't a problem all year, but when it happened, it was bad. Like, it was so apparent when it was a problem.
And I feel like the
Almost
way
there.
that the Kings play probably factors into the rebounding stuff a little bit too, because we talk about Keegan, we talk about
Mhm.
upping his rebounds. Like he shot a lot of threes last year. And you noted this at the beginning. They don't take bad shots, but he made a record number of 3-pointers for a rookie. That draws him away from the basket quite a bit. Now he probably didn't take enough, and I'm guessing in the mind of Mike Brown, he didn't take enough to have, 4.5 rebounds per game or whatever the number was. But I do think some of that stuff factors in. And it actually is kind of what makes me think about Sasha. Sasha, everybody talks about can be a shooter, can be a shooter, can be a shooter. Somebody better be able to rebound the ball.
Yeah.
If we got guys, and let's go with the best case scenario, we got multiple guys shooting 40% from three. You're missing 60% of those shots. You better have someone down there to get some percentage of those rebounds to extend those possessions just a little bit, maybe get you something closer to the basket.
Okay.
Will's going to
So,
find the stat. I'm going to tell you that right now. Will's going to find this rebounding stat.
yeah. So when they lost the rebounding battle, they were.
Can I tell you what's funny as you look that up? Will's looking for those that are watching the stream, like you can see this. I want you to envision what I'm saying, and for those that are listening on the radio, I'm going to set the picture for you. Will Z's got us propped up. We love to do everything on video because we're on YouTube, and it creates a better sounding experience. It just creates a much more fun experience. But it looks like Will is looking at a monitor the size of like the Iron Man wall because his eyes keep scanning from the far right of the screen to the far left of the screen. And I'm just envisioning this massive like projector with numbers on it. And Will is staring at it, and he is going to get us this rebounding number.
So, yeah, I set up a
Go
little
back
TV.
and watch this video, Will. Go back and watch the video and just watch your eyes go from one side of the screen. It looks like you're looking at the biggest monitor ever.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's like I think 25-inch monitor. I put up just a TV for my second monitor. It's been amazing. But all right, I have it. So when they lost the rebounding battle, they were 19 and 24. When they won, they were 28 and 10. So
28 and 10 when they won
Mhm.
the rebounding battle.
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, just something that impacts winning. And I'm sure Mike Brown, all the coaches know it. It's something that doesn't stand out when you look at it maybe on a per game basis, but when you take a step back and look at that larger sample size of a whole season, like if you rebound better, obviously, it's not that crazy of an idea, but if you rebound better, you're going to get more field goal attempts than the opponent, and it's just kind of a winning stat.
I didn't expect it to be that big of a number.
Yeah.
28 to 10 when the Kings win the rebounding battle is man, that's motivation. Do more of that. Coach,
Yeah.
coach, if you're listening, if anyone within the Kings organization is listening, like you said, they've got to know that stat. And if they don't, we'll have James Ham presented at Media Day on Monday. 28 to 10. That's your number when you out rebound your opponent. That's the number of wins you have.
And when you look at the winning percentage too, that's a 442 win percentage versus a 737 win percentage. So just drastic difference. And that's where I think JaVale McGee will come in
Yeah.
clutch too. Like just another big body, even if you're playing him or Len, like they're both going to be good rebounders. That
Any other
you
ways you
just
think we really
yeah.
got off on a discussion about
Yeah.
rebounding? This was about Keegan, and it
Yeah.
kind of evolved into a discussion about Sacramento. I think you're spot on, by the way, about JaVale and what he could do with this group with that particular stat. Any other ways that we missed that you think Keegan could improve and take a step forward this next season?
Yeah, it's the off the dribble, the self shot creation. Again, I think we saw some of that in the California Classic, but it's just something we didn't see hardly at all last year. So again, breaking down some numbers from last year, of his 354 made field goals, 306 of them were assisted and only 48 were unassisted. So pretty much everything that he made was off passes. If you look at his threes, it's even more drastic. He made 206 threes. I think everyone has that number etched in their brain for forever. 201 of those were assisted, 5 were unassisted. So
Wow.
he wasn't taking pull-up shots. And the encouraging part is if you look at the percentages, his catch and shoot field goal percentage, 41.1%, his pull-up field goal percentage, 44%. so it's actually higher. Three-pointers is about a tie. Catch and shoot threes, 41.3%. Pull-up threes, 40%. So the percentages are exactly where you want them to be. It's just the volume of that pull-up shot that we'll see if it goes up this year. If
Hmm.
it can go up, even if the percentages drop a few spots, like to do that in a second year and something that the offense or that the defense will have to scheme for, like, our team's going to put a ton of effort into stopping Keegan shoot mid-range pull-ups off of Sabonis screens? I don't know. Maybe. If they do, then can he improve his passing? It's just this whole cycle of if he gets better at this, it just opens up so much more for the Kings offense.
You, so you're talking about shot creation here, and the 206 and the number that were assisted is pretty amazing. That I think falls back to would the Kings ask him to do more?
Mhm,
And maybe that's maybe the phrasing of the way I put that isn't the right way to do it, saying, "Hey, Keegan, come here, go score more points," or "Hey, be." I feel like it's, "Hey, Keegan, you have the ability to convert on the offensive end. Be more aggressive."
mhm,
Like maybe asking him to do more isn't the right way of putting it, but maybe opening the gate a little bit. Like, hey, we don't have two really good scorers on this team. We've got three. Go be more aggressive with what you do on the offensive end, and those numbers that you did last year will go even higher. It doesn't mean change the game. It doesn't mean we're not going to run threes for you, or we're not going to run plays for you to get open threes just like we did last year. It means if you're feeling a certain type of way, yo, attack.
mhm. And that's what I think the Kings did so good last year is they just rode the hot hand. Like, if someone was feeling it, Monk, Herter,
Yeah.
TD, like, they just let them cook. So, a lot of people, I think the first question is, how many more field goals is he gonna take? How many points is he gonna score? To me, with this Kings team, I'm not looking at the raw numbers of points, field goal attempts. I'm looking at percentages because there's so much offensive talent on here. We haven't even talked about Sasha, who, again, I think his two-point game is gonna be a surprise for everyone. But there's so much talent on this team that Keegan maybe doesn't have to score 18 points. It's just maybe can he have, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but can he have 4 games of 30 plus compared to 1 last year? Like, just more high scoring games compared to more medium scoring games? I don't know. There's a lot of shots to go around, but so many good scores on this team.
Yeah. Let's add James to the conversation because James Ham is here, and he's
Hey,
kind
James.
enough to join us and spend some
Hi,
time with
friends.
us here on this Friday. Let's. I'll ask you, Hammer. Will wrote a great article over on ESPN1320.com about Keegan Murray and in areas where you could easily see improvement from him next year. And one question I asked Will was, "Do you think that the Kings would ask him to do more?" And I guess I'll phrase that a little bit differently with you, Hammer. Do you think Keegan has got the green light to be a little bit more aggressive, as Will pointed out, like we saw in Summer League? And I think that's one reason Summer League stood out for us. Not the incredible offensive performance that Keegan put on. It's that he was doing something we hadn't really seen him do before. He'll catch and shoot threes, as you mentioned. He would catch off an assist. He would do all of that. But Summer League or not, California Classic or not, offensively, he took a game over, and we hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, I think Keegan Murray is like the litmus test for this team, right? You need to you have to look at the other players on the roster and say, are you willing to let Keegan become who he should become? Because that's how you go from being a really good team to a team that's a title contender. Like, and I don't mean this season, but I mean like overall. Like if you want to reach the height that everybody wants to reach, it's the one way to get there is Keegan. Like we can talk about like De'Aaron Fox could have a great season and be just as good as last year, like put up 25 points and maybe he bumps his assists up to a game, right? Sabonis like has a great season, but it's 19 and 13. right? So these are things that like there isn't a lot of way for players on this roster to take some tremendous leap outside of Keegan. And again, I think Malik Monk could average 3 or 4 points more per game. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a player who ascends to a status that's different than he is right now, where he goes from being, in a clump of players that are the fourth best player or the third best player on this team, right? So I think we got Fox, we got Sabonis, and then it's one of Monk, Herter, Barnes, and Keegan Murray. We don't know who the third best player is on this team. Can he like definitively step above those guys? Can he get on a path that the Kings believe he is, which is a path to stardom? And if he can do that, then we start talking about this team as not a 50, 51, 52 win team, but 55, 57 win team. And the only way he gets there to that point, in my opinion, is if his teammates empower him to become that player. Because so far, he's been willing to like take a secondary role again and again and again. And I know a lot of them are pushing him to be something better, but I need 14 guys and like I don't know how many coaches they have, but I'm going to say like 9 coaches and development people and Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox having discussions and media relations telling him he needs to be this guy. I need everybody around this team telling him this is where we're going with you, and then him to take that and feel empowered and become that player.
Well, always a pleasure, man. Looking forward to chatting much more as we get closer and closer to the season. We got a game 1 week from Sunday, which will be exciting to talk about it. I know, crazy to think about. But Will, great to catch up with you, man. Look forward to chatting again soon.
Appreciate it. Can't wait. Thanks.